Hey there, welcome to one of my favorite conversations, which is speaking to the psychographic. This has recently come up again, working with my clients to get their signature speaking piece ready. As an observation that one of our clients had, she was facilitating a very large group over a period of 3 days and really noticed that even though they were the same demographic, as in 20 to 24-year-old, even though they were the same discipline, as in healthcare medical type space, that she had very different reactions from different groups of people. So even though demographically they were exactly the same at the same stage in life, and obviously everybody comes in with their own experiences and conditioning, but basically from a demographic perspective, they were 20 to 24-year-old, equal split male and female, working in the same discipline area. She had very, very different responses, and they were all quite strong. And what this is that we were walking through it because it quite surprised her, and not in a way of, oh my goodness, but in fascination. So what is going on here? Why do we have this cluster that are really all for it, another cluster that are against it, the cluster that came up at the end of it, who are really going to be stepping in and being the champions of the future? And I realized that we need to speak more about speaking into the psychographic, because we have all been raised in an era of marketing and communications where it's all about the avatar. It's all about the audience. It's all about defining your perfect client and customer. And some people have 3 avatars in their business, and you need to speak to each one of them, and that sort of thing. And it's usually a demographic. So for example, in life coaching, it is 40-year-old women who are now in the stage of life where they have some time back, and that is absolutely, and they're middle class and they're this and they're that. And that is absolutely their target market and their avatar for life coaching schools, right? So we have this all throughout what we're doing. You know, when I was working in industrial relations, my avatar was founding owners of mining service companies going through multi-million-dollar growth in less than 12 months, right? So very much a very well-defined demographic. The thing is, though, is that not every founding owner wanted to work with me, right? Have you ever discovered that, right? You've got your demographic down pat, you've got your avatar, and you've defined it, but you still can't really predict who's going to work with you and who's not. And this is where we need to go to the psychographic. So the psychographic is the way people think, and it crosses over the borders generally put in place by demographic, right? So this is what happened in my client's room that she was facilitating, where the demographic was consistent, right? But the psychographic was different. Now, psychographic has lots of inputs. It can be conditioning and experiences before they walk in your room. But generally speaking, it's tapping into a way of thinking that crosses borders, right? So a psychographic can appear in different ways. Different psychographic profiles can be in the same demographic group. And you need to understand what the psychographic is that you're speaking into. And what I mean by this is people who think, or who are at the precipice of thinking the way that you want to take them. People, for example, so for example, even if we come our way from the speaking for a moment, but we've been working with a HR consultant who really wants to go after people. She's looking for HR contacts, and she really wants to go after people who want to make a change. Now, HR traditionally, whilst they're charged with change and people, they're actually quite resistant to change. And so we were walking through how to actually find the people that she wanted. And what I said to her was, go and look at LinkedIn profiles of HR professionals in the organizations that you want to work with, and find the ones that are doing things differently. So find the ones who are out on podcasts, building their own brand. Find the ones who, wherever they move, have got a loyal following. Find the ones who are championing DE&I outside of their own role. Find the ones, so the mavericks. Find the ones who've got opinion pieces appearing in places. Find the ones who are running their own blog in places. Like, you need to look at people not just in the demographic, because she's not actually after every HR and OD manager within these corporates. She's actually after the ones that have actually reached a precipice where they're looking for something different and they're willing to take the risk to make some changes. So you've got to think about the psychographic, right? And when you're speaking, this is actually what we do in our Blue Apple process. We actually have part of our Blue Apple strategy is getting really deep inside the mind of who your ideal audience is. So your demographic will fill the room, but the people who become raving fans will be because they are spot on in your psychographic. And the people who can't get out of the room fast enough will be those that actually are the opposite of your psychographic. And once you understand how this plays out, life becomes a lot more fun, a lot more interesting, right? Because you're actually, you know, what we're looking for is what is keeping them awake at night? What are they curious about? What would they walk across hot coals to solve or to know more about? What would they fight for? What are they sick of laying down for? What are they ready to stand up for? What is the moment of truth or the moment of change that they are seeking? What is the moment of next that they want? These are the things that we need to look at. And I remember years ago when I was first looking at psychographics, running through a general avatar question, doing the demographics, and then these questions at the end were really different. And this is where I first understood about the demographic. So we had to answer questions like, how would your avatar behave if she was abducted by aliens? How would your avatar behave if they had a knife pulled on them, pulled on their throat? So, and when I first read these questions, I thought, oh, this is crazy because everyone's going to have the same answers. No, no, when you actually dive into the deepness of the psychographic, then everybody's psychographic band came up differently because of those questions. So even though it seemed really crazy, it's what sparked this obsession of mine about the psychographic. Because when we speak to the psychographic, we're speaking to the unconscious and the conscious mind, and we're not speaking to the external facade, right? And so this is why we need to get in really deep into it. So it's the through line. In a TED Talk, it's the through line. Right. Now, let's talk about universal TED Talks. They're not speaking to a demographic. They're speaking to a psychographic. People from the age of 10 to 100 will love the same TED Talk. If we think about culture, we think about how Richard Branson originally set up the culture at Virgin Airlines. It was a psychographic, which is why his culture did not falter from the 18-year-old on a front check-in desk through to the most experienced in the executives in the C-suite. The culture didn't change because the culture was built around a psychographic and not a demographic. And this is really, really important. So it is the through line in a TED Talk. In the Blue Apple strategy, we have questions that actually bring that through line to life and help you define what that through line is. But it's also about having an understanding of what the promise is in what you're speaking about. Because if you don't understand what the problem is that you're speaking to and the promise that you're making through what you're going to share through your speaking, then you won't be able to actually identify the psychographic. So if you're having trouble identifying what the psychographic of your speaking audience may be, then I would suggest that you need to go back to basics. You need to do the problem and promise part of what we teach our clients, which is a problem, promise, and process triangle. You need to understand what the problem is that your speaking will solve or your speaking will speak into, what the promise is of what you're delivering through your speaking. And then you also need to do Blue Apple and through line strategy. Until you do those, until you know those, you can't identify the psychographic that's going to work for you. But if you want to become incredible at speaking, whether you are looking to become a professional speaker or are a professional speaker looking to go to the next level, if you're an expert business builder and that's the only thing you're ever going to use your speaking for, or if you're using speaking as a charity, founder and accelerator, then understanding how to speak into the psychographic and letting go of the demographic is going to be the single most important thing you can ever do to make your speaking or to take your speaking to the next level.